Oh my goodness, this might just be one of my favorite topics I've ever had to make a video about. George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, the creator of Indiana Jones, one of the greatest cinematic visionaries of all time, is returning to the big screen. Is it to write or direct a passion project? Nope, he's featuring in the latest Minions movie. Minions and Monsters. While some people might be a bit confused and surprised by this, for some reason this is the most George Lucas thing I've ever read. And you want to know what the best part of it is? The creator of Star Wars admits he's a big Minions fan. Despicable Me is one of his favorite movies of all time. Would you have guessed that? I mean, if you know George, then you know that while he loves his serious films, he's simultaneously partial to the goofy, silly stuff. At the end of the day, he's the guy who created Jar Jar Binks and the Ewoks. I mean, of course he loves Minions. I do too, and I saw a couple of people suggest this on social media. Do you think George was a fan of the Anzellans? Because they're kind of like the Star Wars equivalent of Minions. They're small, cute, funny, hardworking, they make funny sounds.
Bad baby.
And just like the Minions, you have some people who love them, and some people who find them really, really annoying. And for that reason alone, I'm hoping someone asked George flat out, did you watch The Mandalorian and Grogu? And did you like it? I've got a feeling he might have done. It's right up his alley. Weird and wonderful aliens, some which he introduced in the original trilogy, some newer ones, and a lot of slapstick comic relief. And stories like this just go to show you that Star Wars fans think they know George inside and out, but we don't. There are so many different sides to George's creativity, and silliness, childishness, has always been one of those. We even see it in episodes 1 to 6. But because George is the literal creator of Star Wars, he's developed a reputation as this guardian of sacred mythology, someone synonymous with the creator of the most complex archetypes. But I think people forget that he's always embraced broad family entertainment. And so when we talk about what ifs, when we talk about what George's sequel trilogy would have looked like, we look at very serious concepts, but I think we forget that alongside those, there would have been just as much comic relief, wacky aliens and crazy droids. No matter what, George Lucas would have always taken creative risks. One of his biggest criticisms of The Force Awakens was that it didn't do anything new. It was just recycling old ideas. But what I'm trying to say is, George would have still tried to push the needle. He always wanted to do stuff with the midichlorians and the micro aspects of the Star Wars universe. But as always, he intended Star Wars to be for everyone, and there would have been some of that comedy in there as well. And do you realize that we're living in a universe where Martin Scorsese played a monkey in Star Wars, and George Lucas is voicing a character in Minions? And not just that, he's already expressed that he wants to be in the sequel to it. He's already pitched his ideas. But let's dive into it. This comes from Collider.com. For many fans, George Lucas was their introduction into the world of sci-fi fantasy. And while Lucas has made a few cameos and done a bit of uncredited work over the years, he's about to jump headfirst into a whole new world with one of the most delightful animated appearances of the entire year. And now we have new comments from Illumination CEO Chris Meledandri. And he begins by confessing that George Lucas is a huge fan of Minions. And here's the quote. I had this privilege of meeting George about 2 years ago, and what led me to my meeting with him is how much he loves the Illumination movies. He's among a very small group of people who the entire studio shares a level of respect that is just off the charts. Everyone loves George. Even people who don't like Star Wars respect him. Meledandri goes on to tease that the character who George plays was created just for him, and he proposed, what if we could get George Lucas? And they're like, are you kidding me? I had no idea, but I got such a fast yes. And apparently George is already pitching ideas for the character he wants to play in the next Minions movie. And in terms of the recording session to get him to record his lines, it happened thanks to his wife, Melody Hobson. The couple was in Paris, and because some of the team was there, they said, look, should we just get him into a recording booth? And so, it happened like that. The director met him at a recording studio in Paris, and quote, it was done. And to make matters even more exciting, George's cameo comes with an animated version of Orson Welles, and apparently the scene features a couple of other surprises too. So honestly guys, this wasn't originally a film that was on my radar, but now that we know that George is in it, could I truly call myself a Star Wars fan if I wasn't gonna see it? And I'll be honest with you, this was a very smart piece of marketing. This story was trending #1 on Twitter overnight. The maker himself is back. Now all we need is for him to be involved in a Star Wars project. And you might say, that's impossible, it's never gonna happen, George has moved on with his life, he's got his museum which he's focusing on, he only cares about his Star Wars. And while generally I would agree with this, there is another George Lucas update that's suspiciously released at the same time as the Minions one. This might not sound like it's the biggest deal in the world, but the more you think about it, and its timing, it might mean more than we think. In an upcoming 2027 LEGO set, presumably commemorating the 50th anniversary of A New Hope, a minifigure of George Lucas has been made and will be included. And it has been clarified, this isn't a set for the Minions movie. This is LEGO Star Wars. And a few fans are wondering, well, it could just be LEGO giving him a shout out, giving fans extra incentive to buy this set, but considering this releases in 2027, could this be pointing towards an appearance from the creator himself at Star Wars Celebration? I can envision him having his own panel to promote the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art, but what if it's more than this? What if he's hosting a panel for A New Hope's 50th? What if he presents a screening of the theatrical cut and answers some burning questions? One fan hope, which I do think is way too optimistic, is his involvement in new content. I'd be very surprised if they announced a new movie or show where George wrote something or directed. The most we can hope for at this point is collaboration, the same way Dave Filoni calls him up and asks him questions for Mando or Ahsoka. But we are certainly getting a lot of George news. Even though Lucasfilm is Disney now, you just can't have a panel celebrating 50 years of the franchise without the maker himself. He's appeared at a couple of the newer celebrations. I also want to know how George feels about Lucasfilm re-releasing the theatrical cut. For decades he didn't want it to see the light of day. He was adamant the special editions are the final versions. So did Lucasfilm actually approach him? Has he changed his mind on the issue? Does he figure that maybe it makes his museum look good? Maybe after 50 years, he's like, screw it. Let's wait and see though, guys. And recently, George was spotted at the World Cup. There's a meme going round where people were trying to figure out what he was saying. Some fans joked that he's reciting the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, but I think there's more of a chance he was talking about Minions. And finally, guys, one final bit of Star Wars news before we wrap things up. According to Ian McDiarmid, George Lucas was developing a live-action Palpatine show. Ian says, quote, "At the time, it was very speculative. We had lunch one day, and he said, I've got this idea, I hope you want to be involved. We're going to follow the Emperor's progress. There might be an assassination attempt, and of course, it wouldn't succeed." And George also asked him to direct an episode. But it turns out, it just wasn't in the cards. And I think what Ian McDiarmid is referring to are the Palpatine episodes of Underworld. And in that show, we would have seen Palpatine's love interest. That's a pretty awful thought, isn't it? But with that said, my dear friends, that brings us to the end of today's Star Wars news update. Did you have fun? Did you enjoy it? Let me know in the comments. Also, just before we get out of here, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up. That really helps out like you cannot imagine. Make sure to subscribe if you're new. Check me out on Patreon. The link is down there in the description. But until the next one, my dear friends, may the Force be with you always.